about advice and how it's different between our cultures. When we moved to the village, we bought pigs. And every one of our neighbors came over to tell us how to raise pigs. And my husband and I were actually a little offended. Because in our American culture, we're thinking, I don't know you. Why are you giving me advice? I didn't ask for it. Two, do you really think I would buy a pig without doing my research and knowing what I'm doing? You know? So we had those two kind of conflicts. And of course, we had to learn about the culture. And we understood that these people didn't feel like they had anything to offer us except for their advice. And that's how you meet your neighbors here. But again, in American culture, we don't give advice unless somebody asks for it informally by opening up the topic, or they say, what do you think? You know? So if we're talking, and I say, do you have a boyfriend? You say, yes. And I start to tell you, oh, well, you need to be careful of this. If we were in America, I would expect you to get very upset with me. It's like, I didn't invite you into my personal life, you know. So when I talk about American culture and Ukrainian culture being very extremes, that's a perfect example about how here people give advice. And I think your younger culture is not liking it as much, you know, but in our culture, we tend not to do it at all unless somebody really asks for it. You know, if somebody just came up to me and like I was in public and I sneezed, you know, they might say, oh, bless you. Oh, honey, you got a cold? Depending on where we're at. And I might say, yeah. Yeah, I got one too or something. But if I sneezed in public and somebody started telling me the medicine I needed to get, I'm probably going to say, back off. You know, I'm going to, why are you involved in my life? Because we're very individualistic, yeah, instead of that collective group. You know, American culture, we talk one at a time. You know, so like at our rehabilitation center, okay, so there's a big difference in languages. You can't just learn the words and know that language because we have different word values and different phrasing in how things mean. Phrase, yes, a perfect example. But the one that I just said is that if I would invite somebody to a party and they would say, I'm sorry, I have to refuse you. In American English, that's a very negative word that says, no way, I'm not coming. I can't believe you even asked me. That's what refusing means to an American. You know, so the first couple times I had someone say, I'm sorry, I have to refuse you, I had to read their body language and their tone because I knew that something wasn't right. In American English, we would probably say, oh, I'm so sorry, I can't come. You know, I can't accept your invitation because I'm busy or because I'm this. And again, it's how we're polite in English is very different from how you're polite in your language. Yeah, so in English, we're going to do those softer words like, you know, instead of saying, I disagree with you, although if it's somebody's close and we're very angry, we might say that. But most of the time we would say, well, I think that, or I believe, or what about this? You see how I'm approaching it in a very soft manner. Some of my students who had English customers, they got into some trouble because Americans won't come up and say, I want this done, give it to me on Wednesday. And Americans say, well, if you've got a chance, this would be really good if you finish this on Wednesday. You see how that's very soft? So my students, some of them were interpreting that as, hey, just whatever you want to do, you know, it doesn't matter. So they'd come to their meeting on Skype or something on Wednesday, and the American would say, well, where is it? And I said, well, you know, I didn't get it done. And the American would get upset, you know, because I asked you to do it on Wednesday. But because we don't have that we're very indirect. Have a seat, Lena. My students didn't understand it. Another thing is about how we give feedback. You know, here, you know, and so here, because of that history, you're always asking, you know, you're always evaluating, is everything okay? Well, for an American, I'm going to say, good job, and then I'm probably not going to say anything else unless you do something wrong. And then I might say, yeah, that wasn't really good. You see how soft I portrayed that? You know, I was a little upset with you for that. Not I was upset with you, because we soften things. We minimize them or we exaggerate and make them very big. So there was one guy on the American team who actually lost his job because he just couldn't adapt to that different culture, you know, and interact. Another thing for Americans is we have a phrase that says, I do not care what you know until I know that you care. A company here in Ukraine, yeah, in Vinnytsia. So I do not care what you know means that you could be the best expert, but if I don't think that you care about me, I'm not listening to you. So you have to develop a relationship with your customers. You know, and one group, the company asked me to work with the group because they were having problems with their customer. And so in our first class, I asked them, what kind of relationship do you have with your customer? And they're like, oh, we don't have a relationship. And I'm like, warning bells. You know, so I started asking them a little bit more about their customer. You know, and they couldn't really tell me anything. And I said, well, share maybe your last meeting. And they said, well, the customer told us this problem. We talked about it. We gave them our opinion. We're the masters. You need to do what we say. And I was like, oh, no wonder. And they eventually lost their contract because the business style, that Western style, is much, much different. Yes, I hired you. You're the expert, but it's my money. So you need to do what I want. And if you don't build a relationship with me, if I don't think that you really care about me, your expertise means nothing to me. So I don't care what you know until I know that you care. So I'm not going to say, one of the things that I'll be talking about this weekend when I go to talk to these parents and children is about the culture. And the culture is very important. We came across a problem when we first moved, when we were visiting here. When an American says, I want to, they're really saying, I desire to. Okay? We had a translator who didn't know the culture very well, basically just translated word for word. And so we told the church that we wanted to help them. But it came across as yakochu or wihochim, which is very kind of concrete. So the next year when we came back, they were like, where is it? Where's the money? And we're like, well, it just didn't work out. And they were angry with us. They thought we had lied to them. And we're like, we said we wanted to help, but it just didn't work. And again, our translator said, wihochim, you know, instead of it's our jelanie, it's our desire to help. So sometimes those word values for the different words are extremely important, extremely important. Here's another example. We were visiting a church, they had a baptism, we were on the river edge, and a young man came up to me and he says, I want to proposition you. And I was like, excuse me? Because you proposition prostitutes. Prostitutes.
I thought of to marry him.
That's
propose.
To propose.
Propose. Okay.
Yeah. What he said is, I have, really what he wanted. Now sometimes in business, depending on the business, you might get away with saying, I have a proposition for the company. You know, you have to add some more words in there. But for a young man just to come up to me and say, I want to proposition you, I was like, okay, he's got to mean something different, you know. And really what he means is I have a suggestion, or I have an offer, I have an idea for you. Yeah. So again, some of those words can be very, very different in their values. I remember, you know, and he says, you know, what would the car insurance cost? And I started to explain the process to him, and they were really shocked. It's like you just don't go and buy it and that's it. No, in America it has to do, are you male and female? Female car insurance is less. Women take less risks. The younger you are as a man, the higher insurance you're going to have, because young men take many more risks than older men. It also has to do with how many accidents you've had or how many speeding tickets you've had. Because if you've had a couple accidents and speeding tickets, you're a higher risk, so your car insurance is going to be more expensive. You know, he says, and I also explained that it's how many years you've been driving. He says, well, I've been driving 5 years. I'm like, I've been driving almost 50 years. I started driving at 14 years old. You know, so for an
14?
14, yeah. My mom and dad, you don't know about that. But I had my driver's license by 16, yeah. You know, so for us, my sister Carla in South Dakota, her kids got driver's license at 14 because they live in a very rural area, you know, so kids drive themselves to school, you know, and as long as they can't do it in the dark, and I forget, there was one other, they can't have other teenagers in the car or something, but, you know, it's just expected that we're going to be driving. And Mark and I, before we moved here, we had 2 cars and we had a motorcycle, just for the 2 of us.
you know? So, it just, public transportation, I don't think I ever rode, I was never on public transportation in America until after we moved to Ukraine, and we went back for a visit, we didn't have a car. And we had to ride the bus, and it was extremely, awkward for me. Yeah, awkward. Awkward.
Неловко.
Yeah, it just, I wasn't sure what to do, or where to sit, or how do I pay. You know, I'd learned here in Ukraine how you do it, you know, but it was interesting for me. And then there was some drama on the bus that I was like, yeah, get me off this bus.